Hey everybody, this is Kennedy Hawk from the MCM podcast. Today, on our first Technical Thursday, we're going to do a Spider-Man strategy guide. Now, we've done hero strategy guides the last 3 weeks. They're not technically a part of this series. We're not going to revisit those heroes, though. We're just going to smush them in. So we've got only 2 heroes left in the core set before we can move on to hero packs. But for today, we're going to talk about Spider-Man. So Spider-Man, Peter Parker, is one of the 5 core set heroes in Marvel Champions. He's one of 6 heroes with a base stat of 3, with 3 as his defense stat, which is the most popular base stat of 3. Now, a lot of heroes can get to 3 in a stat using an upgrade in their kit, but Peter Parker starts there right from the beginning of the game, which is great. He is the king of defensive builds, and he has a lot of deck flexibility that people overlook. He's often overlooked in general because his kit is just kind of there. It's a great, efficient kit. It doesn't do anything spectacular necessarily. It's not like Captain America with crazy stun lock, and it's not like Doctor Strange with a ton of stun, but it generally just does everything you need it to do and does it really efficiently. So let's swing into Spider-Man's kit. Looking at our identity card, Peter Parker, the alter ego form, has a hand size of 6 and the scientist ability, which is a resource ability to generate a mental resource. A few alter ego actions, but he's just really good on economy by having this extra resource. It's sort of like an artificial hand size of 7 when you're in alter ego form. It's not quite as good as that because this resource isn't floating. You have to use that ability immediately when you're spending the card, so you can't use this for hero actions. It's mainly going to be used for upgrades and allies and things like that, but still a really strong ability. 10 points, pretty standard, kind of on the lower end for heroes, but not as low as those 9 hit point heroes. In hero form, Spider-Man has 1 thwart, I know, 2 attack, and 3 defense. So 3 defense is obviously the thing you're going to want to build around, but 2 attack isn't anything to look down upon either, especially if you can get a combat training out there and get up to 3 attacks. Spidey can hang there with the best of them. His ability is Spider Sense, Interrupt. When the villain initiates an attack against you, draw 1 card. There's a little bit of nuance to this. An attack is only initiated if the attack actually goes off, sort of. So if the villain is stunned, that's a replacement effect. It replaces the entire attack, and you won't get to trigger from Spider Sense. Likewise, if the villain initiates against a different player and you defend for them, you don't draw for Spider Sense because the attack was initiated against the other player. So it's when the villain attacks, basically, I'm not going to use the word you, but when the villain attacks your play area, then you're able to trigger this ability. Still a really good ability because it basically gives you a hero hand size of 6, right? Because every turn you're in hero form, unless the villain's stunned, they're initiating an attack against you right away. So you're going to draw up to 6, which is really strong for having no setup required. He's got some economy and offensive cards. We already talked about his scientist ability, but he's got 2 copies of web shooters. Now, this is a hero resource, and it has uses, so it's not nearly as good as some of the other resource generators. But from the core set, most of the heroes actually don't have resource generators. This is pretty powerful in the core set and powerful in general. We've got Black Cat. I put her under economy and offensive because she's going to try to take cards from you. She mills 2 cards on the top of your deck, and each card with a printed mental resource gets put into your hand when you play her. So she could almost pay for herself. She's got 1 thwart for 1 consequential and 1 attack for no consequential. So she can ping for 1 damage every turn, and you're going to be using that to remove minions, kill Ultron drones, or remove tough, things like that. We've got 3 copies of Swinging Web Kick, which has the aerial, attack, and superpower traits. Superpower is probably the only one right now that's relevant for this. It's a hero action attack, deal 8 damage to an enemy. This is sort of, in my opinion, like the baseline for what hero attacks should be. If you're spending 4 true cost, so the card plus 3, you should expect to get 2 damage per resource. If you're getting less than that, there needs to be a perk to compensate for it. So like Heroic Strike in Captain America does less, but you get a stun. Black Widow's Dance of Death does less, but you get to split it among many targets. So always be looking for sort of this benchmark attack, which is in Spider-Man. Alright, defense and healing events. We've got 2 copies of Backflip. It's an event, 0 cost, as defense cards should be. Interrupt. When you would take any amount of damage from an attack, prevent all that damage. Really good. Really good, right? Rhino's got charge on, he's swinging at you for 7, you backflip it and take none. That's amazing. We've got 2 copies of Webbed Up. Hero form only, so we can't use our scientist ability for this. Attached to an enemy, max 1 per enemy. When the attached enemy would attack, discard Webbed Up instead, then stun that enemy. So this is going to get rid of 2 attacks. Now it's pretty costly, right? It's like a double stun for 4, which is pretty expensive for a hero card. but it's really good in solo. Shutting the villain down for 2 turns is amazing, as these villains come out that have the steady keyword and require 2 stunned cards to like skip an attack. Webbed Up's going to skip 1.5 attacks. It's going to be really, really strong. So, and this is also a way to get around things like stalwart villains can't be stunned, so you don't get the stunned half of this card, but you do avoid 1 attack, which is not doable otherwise. So between that and backflip, you got a lot of defense. You've also got Enhanced Spider Sense, which is a 1-cost event. It has the superpower trait, again, relevant. Hero Interrupt. When a treachery card is revealed from the encounter deck, cancel its when revealed effects. So if something says surge and then when revealed something, it's still going to surge, but you are going to get to cancel those when revealed effects, which can be really, really relevant. I love the art in this card. It's one of my favorite arts in Spider-Man's kit. He's got a lot of really good art in his kit, but this is one of my favorites. And this card's just great. It's bonkers. I mean, you can cancel the when revealed effects for any player. You can save it and cancel the worst when revealed effects. Really, really good. One of the only cancel cards in the core set, so there's only a handful of them, and it's right in his hero kit. We've also got Aunt May, a 1-cost support. She has hero action, exhaust Aunt May, heal for 4 damage from Peter. We'll talk about why that's so good later, but really, Aunt May is a super strong heal. It makes it so your recover stat is basically never used, because she recovers more than you recover, and when you flip down, you're really going to be able to heal to full. Alright, and then we have our Thwart event, Spider Tracers. It's a 1-cost upgrade, item tech, attached to a minion. When the attached minion is defeated, remove 3 threat from scheme. 1 cost for 3 threat isn't bad, but this is really conditional. It's got to be in your hand when there's a minion out there, and then you have to leave the minion around until you want to remove the 3 threat, or you have to eliminate the minion right away. So there's like a lot of work you have to do just to remove 3 threat, when 4 justice costs 1 more and just removes 4 flat out if you have the right resource type. This requires a lot more setup. So it's definitely one of the weak points for Spider-Man. It just leaves me wondering. There are 2 of these. I think I forgot the 2X, but it always leaves me feeling bad when I'm trying to thwart. So what are his strengths? We've got a stout defense. It allows you to maintain hero form for a long time and avoid those villain scheme activations. And I feel like Spider-Man is one of the few heroes that really, really does this. It's something the designers have said for a lot, and a lot of players have said, is one of the ways that protection and defensive builds can do thwarting, basically, is by preventing threat from being placed, by staying in hero form. And Spider-Man, with those backflips and the webbed ups and his spider senses ability, he really has the chance to do that. So I encourage you to stay in hero form for a long time. He's got an efficient big swing attack. It can help seal the game. It's really easy to get the villain from 10, 12 hit points to 0 with a Spider-Man turn just by drawing 1 swinging web kick, or 2 if you can afford them, which is crazy. This can also avoid retaliate on things like MODOK, things that have 8 health. Then retaliate, you can eliminate them in 1 blow and avoid the retaliate, which is really nice. He's got extremely good economy, whether you're in hero form or alter ego form. I do really like that his hero's hand size is basically 6 with no setup. All you have to do is take an attack, either to face or defend from the villain. That's really, really nice to be able to flip that first turn, knowing you're still going to have 6 cards to spend the next round. He can make really quick use of flipping if he does have to flip to alter ego. Aunt May can really be optimized. Basically, when you flip to alter ego form, on your first turn, you can heal 4 with Aunt May. And then at the start of your next turn, you can heal another 4. So you can go from 2 health to full health with Spider-Man. So you kind of want to master that. And we'll talk about that here in a few slides. So what are our weaknesses? Well, we have ping damage and we have that big swing damage, but there's nothing medium in Spider-Man's kit. He's got his 2 base stat attack, but when you get these 4 health, 5 health minions, you're really stuck sitting there saying, do I really want to spend a swinging web kick and overkill this thing by 4 damage without actually having overkill? It kind of stinks. So sort of dealing with those middling minions can be really annoying. And at the same time, his big defense stat, it doesn't really help him against the minions if he's defending against the villain. So you're taking a lot of minion hits to face if you're leaving those minions out. And likewise with your Spider Tracers, you're going to have to leave those minions out if you need to do some thwarting, because your 1 base thwart is not good enough to cut it. The stunned card in his kit is kind of counterintuitive, kind of counter synergy, since it won't trigger his Spider Senses ability by playing webbed up if you're in solo. You're spending 5 resources, because the card plus 4, and then you're eliminating 2 cards of card draw when the villain attacks you the next 2 times. So it's kind of a feel bad, right? It's almost like spending 7 resources to get 2 stuns. And that's a really low investment. But at the same time, in multiplayer and even in solo, that card can be worth it and amazing. So it's a feel bad, but it's also not a feel bad. Spider-Man's very draw dependent. Just looking at the cards in the slide, there's a lot of cards in Spider-Man's kit that you need to draw at the right time. And if you depend on just drawing the right cards at the right time, a lot of times you draw them at the wrong time, and that can be a problem. So you don't want to sit on Spider Senses for 4 turns waiting for that Shadows of the Past, because you basically now said, okay, well, I canceled Shadows of the Past, but by leaving this card in my hand for 4 turns, I've made it cost 5 to cancel that instead of just 2. That's a negatory. Don't do that. Maybe keep it for 1 turn if you know the deck is thin and there's a bad card left, or if you have backflip and you get attacked for 1 damage, say, okay, well, maybe I'll take it this time, and then next turn I have to use my backflip. But don't linger onto them for too long. All right, top 5 Spidey tips. I started going into some of them ahead of time like I always do. Tip number 1, master the flip. Flipping to Peter form is really attractive. That scientist ability is really exciting. Remember, it's only going to work on non-hero actions, so you can't play your exciting events with it, but you can play allies, some of the best cards in the game, supports, some of the best cards in the game, so it really depends. The unfortunate thing about flipping is a lot of those conditional cards we just talked about, Enhanced Spider Senses and Backflip, that's 4 cards in your kit, those require you to basically be in hero form. I mean, you're usually not taking attacks for backflip when you're in alter ego form. So nothing feels worse than saying, okay, I'm going to flip down because I really need a backflip for the next time Rhino attacks me. And you draw your first 5 cards, and then you get that 1 extra card for alter ego form, and it's a backflip. So you would have top decked it from staying in hero form anyway. Nothing feels worse than that, because now the villain's placing threat. It's really hard to claw your way back from threat as Spider-Man, so you have to really be careful when flipping. Count your advances, same way. So like I said, it's really hard to climb back from threat being overloaded onto the main scheme. All of a sudden, if Rhino's threat is at 5, Spider-Man can't flip anymore. He's just out of luck. So if you know where those advances are, there's going to be 2 in almost every scenario. If you see them in the discard pile as boost cards, you can feel a little better flipping. So this is good advice for every hero, but in particular for heroes that have 1 thwart and some like conditional thwarting, kind of like our Spider Tracer here. It's really important to know where advance is and know the chance that you're going to have or not have at having it as your encounter card. Okay, tip number 2. No, I'm going to really linger on this. You have to master your ability to flip as Spider-Man. I think I said this in the She-Hulk video and the Captain Marvel video. It's a very pivotal point when you decide when to flip and when not to flip. With She-Hulk, it makes it very attractive. It is with Spider-Man as well, but you cannot afford to flip very much because your thwarting is so subpar and so dependent on having minions, it can just set you up for a loss. So when you flip, you really have to make it worth it. So one of the things that I tell people to do is really think about how low you can go in health in hero form. You've got 3 defense and 10 health. So let's say Rhino hits you for 4, and he hits you for 4 more, and now you're down to 2. This is a good time to flip, because if you flip down and you have Aunt May out, she can heal you for 4, get you back to full health. With 1 flip, you've recovered 8 damage without even using an activation. That's golden. But if you're at like 5 health, and you've only taken 5 damage, and you want to go flip down and heal, you're basically wasting 3 recovery from Aunt May. So you kind of want to take like 1 more hit to the face. And at the same time, like the villain could boost and eliminate you. So you've got to figure it out. How do I get myself down to that like missing 8 hit points region, maybe missing 7, and it's worth it? But you definitely don't want to flip when you're only missing 4 hit points just for the card draw and to use Aunt May. You can get a lot more done by staying in hero form, defending once, and drawing those extra cards. All right. I talked a lot about conditional draw, and the main conditional draw culprits here are Backflip, Enhanced Spidey Sense, and Spider Tracer. That's 6 cards in your hero kit. They either need something to happen out of they all need something to happen out of the villain deck to get use out of them. So you need to take a big attack, so the villain needs to have a big boost card or an attachment to justify playing Backflip. You need to draw a Treachery that's bad enough to use Enhanced Spider Sense, and you need a minion to come out for Spider Tracer. But those things don't always happen when you have these cards in your hand. So take the control of that away from the villain deck. One way you can do this is by including a lot of card draw. We're talking Maria Hill, we're talking Avengers Mansion. Just about anything you can put in your deck to draw cards means you'll know where these cards are more often. If your hand size is 10, then, I mean, that's a little bit ridiculous, right? That would be like 4 Avengers Mansions in a multiplayer game. But then you always know, like, okay, I have these 10 cards. I have the cards that are in my discard. I know how many backflips are left, and I might draw into one or I might not. And that can help you decide if you need to flip or not, which is really important. The other thing you can do is there's a whole suite of cards that have the villain attack you. I'm thinking of toe-to-toe and bait and switch. Toe-to-toe is the villain attacks, or an enemy attacks you, and then deal 5 damage to that enemy. So you can have the villain attack you, draw a card with your hero ability, get to use something like backflip that was in your hand that you didn't want to waste a resource by keeping your hand from turn to turn, and then you get to deal 5 to the villain at the end of the turn. Doesn't feel bad at all. Likewise, bait and switch. I mean, Spider-Man is on this card for a reason. The villain attacks you, you defend it and probably take no damage, and then remove 4 threat from the main scheme and draw a card from Spider Senses seems really, really good. So take some of those chances away from the encounter deck and make them certainties under your control. With Spider Tracer, you can do things like looking for trouble, and I don't want to belabor on this too much because tip 5 is always here's some cool combo cards with Spider-Man, and I probably just mentioned a bunch of them, but I think it's really important with Spider-Man and these characters that have what I call conditional draw, like cards you could draw where you don't meet the conditions to make them useful. Make it so you have more control over that, and the villain deck has less. Alright, the last trick, and I mean, Spider-Man's kind of a real basic ally, or basic hero, because these tips are good for every hero that exists, but always look for lethal. I find a lot of times when I'm playing with some new players or I'm teaching someone the game, they're sitting there and trying to do all this cool stuff and remove threats, and I look at their hand and I say, you have 12 damage in your hand and the villain has 12 health left. Just eliminate the villain and win. There's no bonus for eliminating all the minions or removing all the side schemes unless you're playing some kind of judged format like the Solo Champions League, which is really cool. Then you should worry about what the board state looks like. But when you're just playing a regular game, always look for lethal. And with Spider-Man, I encourage you to always think of, if I threw a web kick next turn, could I get it to the point where I win? Because if you can, there's 3 of those in your deck. You're going to draw into one eventually, and you're going to end the game. So if you could get the villain into that 10 health, 8 health region, 8 health means just a web kick takes him away, so you can even defend, and you know you can live one more round and defend. And 10 health means you can use your base attack and your web kick. And this is common sense. Like, every hero should do this, right? Black Widow should be thinking, if I can get the villain down to 8, I can use my base attack and my Dance of Death. But it's something that's not obvious, but should be thought about. And especially with Spider-Man, because you're going to have that 6-card hero size. You're going to draw a lot of cards from your deck. And sometimes all it takes is one web kick. So try to get yourself into that web kick regime so you know all I need is one more turn and I can seal the game. And when you get to that point, always think about not necessarily doing this mental gymnastics to get everything off the board, but looking at your hand and saying, I know I can burst for a lot of damage because I have a web kick in my hand. Let's just try to finish it. And I think that works a lot for Spider-Man. It mainly works because of his high defense. All right, let's talk about some high synergy spider cards. So in aggression, I put Relentless Assault in combat training. Relentless Assault is deal 5 damage to a minion. If you paid with a fist, it's going to gain overkill. The fist thing is sort of optional for Spider-Man, if we're being honest. He just doesn't have that medium damage, the damage that isn't ping from Black Cat or 8 from Swinging Web Kick. So being able to deal 5 to a minion takes care of a lot of meaty minions, Hydra soldiers, things like that. Combat training and Spider-Man gets him up to 3, so that gets rid of a lot of minions that are at that 3 threshold, armored guards, and things like that. Next, we have Looking for Trouble on Spider-Girl. So Looking for Trouble is kind of a twofold for Spider-Man. You're going to discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you find a minion, put it into play and remove 3 threat from the main scheme. So 0 cost, remove 3 threat. Sounds like something Spider-Man needs. But also, you're going to summon a minion, so then you can put your Spider Tracer on it. If you can eliminate that, now you've removed 5 threat from the scheme. So that seems like a really exciting combo. The other thing you have to think about doing with Spider-Man is if a minion comes out and you don't have your Spider Tracer, but there's a bunch of side schemes that you need to remove threat from, sometimes you need to maintain that minion. And one way to do that is to use allies or characters that stun and confuse that minion. I used to think this was a big waste, but Spider-Girl has become like the MVP aggression ally for me. Being able to put a stun and a confuse on a minion and then let it linger there for 2 rounds while you look for that thing that's going to let you remove a side scheme is so clutch. And Martial Prowess, those web kicks cost 3, right? So it's annoying that you can't play 2 of them in your 6-card hero hand size because they are 2 of the cards. But if you get a Martial Prowess down, now one of them costs 2, the other one costs 3. You're getting a little bit closer to being able to play both. And we'll talk about how you do that in a couple slides. All right, so for Justice, I mean, Spider-Man's just really bad at thwarting. So 4 Justice, clear the area. I mean, just take all the good Justice cards and throw them in a Spider-Man deck, and you're going to end up with an okay deck. Clear the area in particular is really good because it draws you that card, and it's really cheap. Now, for Justice, remember you can't use your Mental Scientist resource, but your web shooters are wild resources, so they can help with the resource matching for Justice. I think Beat Cop's great. What Spider-Man does best is he just plops himself in hero form and he sits there all game until he needs to flip, which means there's very few fill-in scheme activations, but there's still that one auto threat turn after turn. So Beat Cop can just soak up that auto threat. And honestly, when I was playing core set only, and even nowadays sometimes, I mean, Surveillance Team is a bad card, don't get me wrong. But in Spider-Man, maybe it's not that bad of a card. I mean, it's still 3 cost to only remove 3 threat, right? That's like 4 Justice without matching the resource type. But Spider-Man doesn't need Thwart in like a burst, like 4 Justice. And this sort of thins his deck for when he's shuffling through it until all the uses are out. But it's Exhaust Surveillance Team, remove 1 Snoop counter from it to remove 1 threat from a scheme. I mean, you can throw that down and then start using it turn after turn, and Spider-Man can sit in hero form, and you're countering that auto threat so that Advance doesn't bite you in the butt. I put Stealth Strike in here as well. Again, some medium amount of damage to handle those minions, and this one has the bonus of removing threat as well. So if you have, right, a Hydra Bomber out there with a Spider Tracer on it, and you Stealth Strike it, you've now done 4 damage to that minion, gotten rid of the minion, and removed 4 threat from a scheme, or 5 threat from a scheme. Seems broken. Not broken good, because it's real expensive, but seems really good. Okay, protection, my favorite aspect for Spider-Man. There are so many good protection cards. I could have filled in, well, let me wash my mouth out with soap. There are so many good cards in the protection aspect that work well with Spider-Man. So there's a lot of cards that are about this defend and take no damage gimmick. That's a gimmick with a lot of heroes, but it's not with Spider-Man, right? He's got that base 3 defense. You get an armored vest out there, you can get to 4 defense. You're going to be triggering Unflappable every round. So now the villain attacks you, you draw to 6. You trigger Unflappable, you draw to 7. Now, just for defending, you've got a 7-card hand size every turn. That's pretty insane. And then Hard to Ignore is great too. After your hero defends against an attack and takes no damage, exhaust Hard to Ignore to remove 1 threat from the main scheme. I even use this, like if I don't think I'm going to be able to defend the full villain attack, you can use this against minions too. So that minion comes out there, you want to leave them out there for a while, you just defend with Spider-Man every turn, and he's thwarting for 3 if you get 3 of these Hard to Ignores out. It's amazing. For minion control, we've got Hard Knocks, deal 4 damage to an enemy. If that enemy is defeated by this attack, give your hero a tough status card. It's just minion damage with bonus, we're going to take it. For the sort of readying effects, we have Desperate Defense and Never Back Down, and they're both really good events. One is when your hero defends against an attack, it gets +2 defense. If they take no damage from the attack, ready your hero. Really, really good for Spider-Man. It's good in solo and multiplayer. In solo, you do that, you ready, now you can use your base stat the next turn. In multiplayer, you do that. If you're the first player, you ready, and now you can defend for the second player. Or if you're the second player, you can defend for the first player, ready, and defend for yourself. So you can get double defenses in, which is really, really good using that 3 stat twice. You're probably going to take no damage with 5 as well, so that's also like a good benefit. Never Back Down is a little bit weirder though, because it stuns the enemy, so it's not as good in solo, because it's kind of just like webbed up, right? You defend for 5 and take no damage, and now you stun the villain. But now next turn you're not going to draw for Spider Senses, which isn't nearly as good. This works okay in multiplayer when you're the first player, right? Because you can defend for yourself, or defend for yourself, stun for the other player. And when you're the second player, it doesn't work out as conveniently, because you would defend for yourself because you want the villain to initiate attack against you. You don't want to stun them during the other player's attack. But then next turn you become the first player in 2-player. Once you're into 3 or 4-player, this makes sense almost all the time. So sort of for like multiplayer, you have to play around with it a little bit. At higher counts, it works really well, but I don't recommend Never Back Down in solo, I guess is the long-winded thing that I'm trying to say. All right, let's talk about some high synergy Black Cat cards, really. So Black Cat is amazing. She is a really cool, unique signature ally with that no consequential damage. So there's a lot of fun things we can do with her. And this is just thinking about like Avengers things, because Spider-Man's an Avenger. But if you go into Guardians things with multiplayer, it gets even crazier. But she takes no consequential from attacking. So if you place Inspired on Black Cat, now she pinks for 2. We're talking minion removal stuff. If you put an honorary Avenger on her, you can get Power Gloves and Sky Cycle on her. So now she swings for 2 and pings something for 1, and then she readies and swings for another 2 and pings something for 1 every round. That seems bonkers. And another way that I've been recently playing Black Cat that's really fun is like a bouncing Black Cat. She has that ability that she discards cards and then puts them into your hand when she comes into play from hand with mental resources. And a lot of the leadership recursion, like Make the Call and Rapid Response, doesn't play from hand, it plays from discard, so it doesn't trigger her ability. But Regroup does. So when an ally is defeated by an enemy attack, return it to its owner's hand instead of discarding it. When the round ends, discard this card. So if you play Regroup, the villain attacks you, so you draw to 6. Black Cat defends instead of Spider-Man. She gets eliminated by Regroup and bounces back to your hand. You've got 7 cards in your hand now, and you're going to play Black Cat next turn, and hopefully you build your deck with a bunch of mental resources and draw into several of them. And it's a really interesting way to play Black Cat. I haven't really taken advantage of that, like how many times can I spam her and get a lot of stuff out of it. But it's been really fun. Another thing that I recommend for people that need to sort of maintain minions until they draw into those spider sensors is Groot. Now Groot has that nasty ability, play only if your identity has the Guardian's trait, but you can sneak him in with Make the Call, so I kind of count him as a leadership card in this case. And US Agent is really good for that too. You can sort of soften up those minions while you're maintaining them, and then put the Spider Tracer down and let Spider-Man finish the job with his base attack eventually. So those are some pretty fun leadership cards with Spider-Man. Basic cards are basic cards. Just include the good ones, right? Put Avengers Mansion and put Nick Fury and put Ironheart. Things that let you draw and find where those cards that are conditional are, so that you can start planning around them instead of depending on drawing into them. And again, I'm sort of recommending you hold a card from turn to turn. But please, 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 do not hold Enhanced Spider Senses for more than 1 turn. Every turn you hold it, you're basically increasing its cost by 1. So if you hold, I'm going to say it again, if you hold that Spider Senses for 4 rounds, so you draw 1 less card 4 times, you're now really paying 5 for Enhanced Spider Senses. And I don't know if it's ever worth 5 resources to cancel a Treachery card, unless it's Galaxy's Most Wanted, and then you're probably already lost if you've lasted 5 turns. So don't do it. Keep it for 1 turn and just bring a lot of draw so you can always draw into it and know, okay, I'm going to keep this for 1 turn and cancel whatever comes up. Or no, I need to draw into this now because there's something left that could end my game. Alright, last basic card is Deft Focus. So this combos really, really well with Martial Prowess. So Swinging Web Kick was a superpower. So if you use Deft Focus and you use Martial Prowess, you can now get your Swinging Web Kicks down to 1 cost, which is really good. So you can now play 2 in a round, pay 3 for 1, and then 1 for the second one. This also, so that mainly just works for this one. You can't actually use it with Enhanced Spider Senses. I was about to lie to you and tell you you could, but since this is a hero action and it only lasts until the end of the turn, it's going to last until the end of your turn, or the turn that you're in. So you're not going to be able to use this during the villain phase, which is a bit of a bummer, but it still works with Web Kick, and I'm pretty happy with the results I've seen with that. And that was it. That was our first Tactical Thursday Spider-Man strategy guide. Be sure to list in the comments below what your favorite ways to use Spider-Man are. Put decks in there for people so that when people watch this video, they can see this as like a library resource that just has a ton of Spider-Man information for everybody about their favorite web slinger. So if you liked this video, be sure to let me know, like and subscribe. Try and do these daily videos to provide a lot of content for new players, but also for experienced players. If you watch these videos and you think of a tip I didn't go over, I really want you to leave it in the comments so that people can know exactly how to make Spider-Man feel amazing like he is in the comics. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great Thursday.